Hello, my name is Recky, and welcome back for another reaction. We got something completely different today. Moving rocks. And they move by themselves. Saw a picture a couple of days ago, and it got me intrigued. And I got the greatest supporters that this gives me the best videos ever. Thank you. This one is from a channel called Physics Girl, and the video is called 99 Years Later, We Solved It. So I'm super eager for this one. How the crap can they move by themselves? I'm assuming extreme heat. That's it. If you do enjoy this content, smack the like and of course hit that subscribe. I would greatly appreciate that. A big thank you to the channel members and the Patreon. Thank you so much for the amazing support. A big shout out to the Supreme Tier donators over by Patreon and channel membership. Thank you so much. Thank you. And we have personal shout outs for the ultimate supporters only available on Patreon. Deja, Walt, Roni, Dwayne, Tammy, Kevin, Dana, Troy, Sarah, and Robert. Oh my days, that list gets longer and longer. And thank you for the incredible support. So I'm very eager to find out how this actually work. Like I said, I'm gonna assume it's all about heat. So if you want to check out the channel we're watching, the link for the channel is available in the description as well for this video we watch. So let's do this.
Trail, and the trail goes pop, 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 pop over here, and then it takes.
Did he start weird?
Look at this. Okay, so here's a trail, and the trail goes pop, 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 pop over here, and then it takes a right angle turn.
There are rocks in the Death Valley Desert that move across the ground on their own, leaving behind bizarrely long tracks. And for a century, nobody could figure out why.
So look at the size of that puppy. And it turns out no sweat to move every single rock out here. We're talking many, many bulldozers' strength worth of force.
So what force has been making rocks move for over 100 years when humans aren't looking? The first recorded account of the trails was in 1915 when a prospector named Joseph Crook, who was supposed to be out searching for precious metals, found the rock trails. Crook reportedly showed the rocks to his wife, who couldn't believe that the larger rocks would move naturally. So she skeptically marked the position of a big rock, and of course, it eventually moved away from the mark. The lake bed came to be known as the racetrack playa, and the stones, the sailing stones. You go to the desert and you see the tracks, these giant
I got a goosebump. I don't know why I got goosebumps on that.
rocks have left behind, some that are parallel where the rocks have moved at the same time and then they've turned the same time, and you're like, what is going on? So I started looking into it, and what I found was a heartwarming story about two cousins who solved the mystery together, and a clever experiment that had convinced scientists that the correct solution was wrong. And then this moment where scientists all over the world were reaching out saying, oh, I have this other mystery with rocks moving. And a young scientist whose life was changed by this mystery. So back in 2014, cousins Dr. Richard Norris and James Norris solved the rock mystery at the racetrack playa. And now they're back. So I spent 16 hours traveling out to meet them and join in on their latest adventure. Check your spare tire, sharp rocks ahead, no AAA. Ah! Vibrating my butt. Hey Diana. Hey, I'm Diana. You're watching Physics Girl. I think it's also worth taking a minute to appreciate how incredible the setting is for these rocks. Death Valley is in the northern Mojave Desert, sitting in the rain shadow of the Sierras.
I heard it could be like extremely hot. I mean, it's a desert, Recky, but it's kind of weird to think about a desert in America. But there's actually Death Valley. That's actually a desert.
Valley is one of the driest places on the planet, and it is certifiably the hottest. So naturally,
holy
we
crap,
went there in the winter. When we went, we camped out for a night in Stovepipe Wells, which is a nice midway point because it has a gas station and a general store that once served 12 pots of coffee in an hour. And then we took a 4-wheel drive Jeep and then trekked the 24 miles down a bumpy dirt road.
I love her
sit
energy.
there clenching and hoping you don't pop a tire. All up until you see the playa. I couldn't even wait for Levi to come film me because I raced out onto the racetrack by myself. Everything is so uniform, and then boom, a track That's so cool.
This is the lowest point over here.
Okay.
And if you go up to the grandstand, which is the pile of rocks at the far end.
Okay,
So
that's what the grandstand
It's called
is.
the grandstand.
The lake bed of the racetrack is filled with dried sediment that extends 1,000 feet down into the ground. So one of my first thoughts was whether the tracks were caused by an animal, but then you see this place. We're like, what lives in Death Valley? It's called Death Valley. There can't be much.
Well, we had a beautiful kangaroo rat in our camp last night.
Oh, cute.
And they're the cutest little thing.
They're cute, but they're not pushing around rocks that weigh as much as refrigerators. Richard had heard about the racetrack problem many years prior in school, and eventually the itch of the mystery got to him enough.
Well, so what happened fundamentally is that Jim said, I think we could probably solve this little problem.
So they began coming out to the racetrack and trying out experiments.
Jim had the idea of putting the GPSs on the rocks. We set out our own rocks, of course, drilled holes in the rocks to put a GPS tracker in. The switch would be thrown and the GPS would turn on to live mode, okay, collecting data constantly.
Well, you would know the rocks had moved, but how would you know what had happened?
And then connecting that with a weather station meant that we would know what the weather conditions were.
So the duo set out their trackers in the winter of 2011, and their collaborator, Ralph Lorenz, reportedly claimed this would be the most boring experiment ever, as they prepared to wait for something to happen, knowing that it might take decades. But a mere 2 years later, the motion-activated GPS trackers switched on a day when they least expected movement. Before we find out why the GPS trackers switched on, a quick message. I'd like to thank the sponsor of today's video, BetterHelp. Is there something interfering with your happiness or preventing you from achieving your goals? Sometimes I get caught up worrying about conflict with other people for months or years, and I wish I just talked it out and frankly just stopped ruminating. BetterHelp assesses your needs and matches you with your own licensed professional therapist, and you can start communicating within 48 hours. It's not a crisis line, it's not self-help, it's professional therapy but done securely online. There's a broad range of expertise in BetterHelp's 20,000 plus therapist network, which may not be locally available. And the service is available worldwide, so you can log in anytime and send a message to your therapist. BetterHelp is committed to facilitating great therapeutic matches too, so they make it easy and free to change therapists if needed. It's more affordable than traditional offline therapy, and financial aid is available. BetterHelp wants you to start living a happier life today, so visit betterhelp.com/physicsgirl. That's betterhelp.com/physicsgirl, and join the over 1 million people taking charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced professional. And as a special offer to viewers of Physics Girl, you can get 10% off the first month at betterhelp.com/physicsgirl. And now back to the day the GPS trackers turned on when the cousins hadn't expected it. Because after reviewing prior experiments, here's what they had expected to see.
There's these two camps, you know, it's strong, powerful winds, it's ice, and we were both inclined towards the wind idea.
Okay.
The sharp and carry experiment sure suggested that ice wasn't the driver. That was, I have to confess, convincing to me.
The reason Richard is confessing is because the experiment he was referencing was so beautifully convincing that it was not ice. Here's how that experiment went. Scientists put stakes in the ground surrounding a couple rocks, and then one day, one rock moved out and the other one stayed in. The researchers were convinced if sheets of ice were dragging the rocks, then both of the rocks would have moved. So at this point, James and Richard pretty much rule out ice.
It's so weird. I mean, why didn't the other rock move? Is someone pushing it? Is it aliens? Is it ghosts?
They're team wind, so they head out to the playa expecting a hurricane to blow the rocks around.
And our expectation was that we would come out here with a 4-season tent. We would stake it down. When it was howling outside, we'd peek out, you know, and we'd see the rocks scooting by kind of thing.
But on a chilly morning with a light breeze, a few days after a snowstorm had brought enough water to make a 3-inch pond on the playa, something happened.
I have an embarrassing thing to say. You know, we saw it like an hour after it happened.
Okay.
But we were unfortunately over there. about a kilometer away. And we saw all the ice that had been a part of this big ice panel piling up out there from the other side. Yep. And it was like, Jim, what's going on? And then we walked along the shoreline over there, and there was big piles of this clinker ice. It kind of goes clink, 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 clink all over the shoreline. That's, plate glass, thin, clear, beautiful glass with rocks in it.
Giant sheets of ice, hundreds of feet across, were starting to move across the playa.
And then we arrived down here. We climbed up on what we call the source hill, because that's where almost all the rocks come from.
Gotcha.
And it was like, oh my God, we missed it. The biggest move event in 10 years, and we were on the wrong, kilometer away. Cool. Well, and then it was like the scales fall from your eyes then we understood immediately what was going on.
What they realized was that on rare occasions, when the playa fills with water from rain or snow and is deep
So I was completely wrong. It's not the heat?
enough to form floating ice during exceptionally cold nights, the pond freezes to form thin sheets of ice. The ice then begins to melt in the daytime sun. The ice breaks up, and as the wind picks up, it blows the sheets of ice across the playa and drags the rocks with it. And of course, the rocks drag trails in the ground as they go.
The winds are not strong. I had to kind of hold my hat on.
Yeah.
That wind stress over a couple square kilometer area of floating ice, of course, it's causes the ice to move.
Here's why this is all so amazing.
We do know how thick the ice was, and the ice was about 1/8 of an inch thick.
Wow.
Isn't that great?
What Richard and James soon realized was that the corral experiment hadn't disproved the ice theory. It had disproved thick ice.
Move a rock like that with ice that is, thin enough to tear past those stakes. No, that doesn't seem reasonable.
The ice was thinner than anyone thought was possible.
It's this is
Little thin sheet of ice.
That's amazing.
Huge. Both start moving, and then they move for 16 minutes with the same exact pattern, but they're 650 feet apart.
Yeah.
And you're going, that's a single panel of ice.
So the wind moves the ice and drags the rocks, and the rocks make the tracks. But here's the thing. The pond isn't big enough to fill the entire playa, and yet...
Some of the rocks do travel all the way over to the distant shoreline.
How do we know?
And you know that they've far traveled because they're this distinctive dolomite.
Okay.
And the only source of dolomite is from there.
Which is just right there. How do they get there?
When you get a pond, the pond forms here. It's almost a flat surface. The pond goes there. It's a classic, what the oceanographers call a seiche event.
Seiche event. A seiche is when strong winds can cause really rapid changes in the height of water. In this case, it moves the entire pond from one end of the playa to the other. The pond essentially rolls uphill.
And all the rocks just go, off they go.
And then at the end of the day, the wind dies down and it moves all the way back. So they published a paper describing what was going on in 2014. And what happened next was amazing. My favorite part of this whole story is that after you publish your paper, there are all these scientists from all over the world that are sending you emails and mailing you photos. They're like, wait, I have something.
We were out here at one point and we met this couple in the parking lot. And the wife told us this story about seeing this video on TV of ice bursting through somebody's garage in the Great Lakes. And you can find these on YouTube, these pictures of ice that is being blown across the Great Lakes. Of course, an enormous area, big, long fetch, right? And it forms mountains that are like, I don't know, at least a couple.
This is one of the videos we've seen in one of the national disaster, and it all makes sense. But ice this thick moves blocks of rocks.
A couple meters high.
Everywhere he went, people started telling him about mysterious things that they had found, of rocks and ice being moved by unusual forces.
And then we've observed in Google Earth images of Great Slave Lake, basically house-sized rocks that apparently have scribed trails in the bottom of the lake.
But there are also still some other unanswered mysteries.
And then there's this place in Spain that is out in the La Mancha area, Man of La Mancha, and they have had documented rock trails on them. Those folks say that it is not this mechanism. And their argument is that they're salt lakes, and so the salt it lowers the freezing temperature of water enough that you wouldn't get ice forming on the surface to make the rocks move. I don't believe that story.
Oh,
That's going to
okay.
be, a future adventure to Spain.
So I think I finally understand why it took so long to solve this mystery.
We could tell that the rocks move for about 15 minutes, and then they
And
stop.
they're done.
You have to be here right at the right time.
At the exact.
It is a perfect Goldilocks.
It's Goldilocks on cocaine.
Yeah.
That's the whole different children's story that we don't usually tell. It's the hottest place on Earth, but you need it to be freezing at night. Or it doesn't rain that often, I would imagine.
That's the key.
It's incredibly windy, but you need just gentle winds. And you need a source of rocks on this playa that's mostly 1,000 feet deep of just straight sediment. Everything about this problem is just perfect, which is one of the things I love about this story. But the thing I love the most is this next bit about a little girl from Germany.
So one of the people who contacted us after our paper was published was a 13-year-old girl in southern Germany. Her name is Ronja Spunky, and she had been doing experiments to simulate what was going on here at Death Valley for her science fair project. And it turns out like no sweat, to move every single rock out here. We're talking many bulldozers' strength worth of force. The whole notion that it had to be like really super slick, to get the rocks to move, this is bull. Okay, and Ronja showed that in her little, after school experiment. And it turns out that she won a whole series of science fair projects.
There's not that many scientific things we go see that there's a lot of people out here coming to visit and check out. So this one is pretty spectacular. And you can go see the stones if you want. It's not easy. I know Richard and James were really eager to solve the mystery, but I don't think they ever expected the impact they were gonna have on other people's lives. And I can't wait for the answers they uncover.
Wow, I got
Thanks
goosebumps.
so much for watching, and happy physicsing.
Again, it's one of those stories that you, oh my God, my hair. It's one of those stories that you gotta be slightly interested in actually when it comes to physics and natural phenomenon. It's a phenomenon. It's incredible cool to see that people actually dig in and try to solve this mysterious thing that happened around us on planet Earth, and that is so cool. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy this, let me know by smacking a like and maybe comment something in the comment section. If you thought that was cool or interesting, just use the comment section. If you want to become one of the awesome people, click join to become a member or check out the coolest link ever pinned on top of all the comments. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Recky. You stay safe.